what I was doing yesterday. Well, sort of. I've kind of refined a little bit of the NPC scripting. It's not much. I scooted some stuff around, rearranged some of the triggers. What all did I do yesterday? I fixed a few things where the player hovers the mouse over certain things. Like right now, if the player is moving the cursor over this camera field, it's going to pull a value off the planets or the stations and give a description. Currently that's being stored inside a variable down here in the active variables. For stations, it's going to be called station, or it's going to use this station tag with an underscore. Object applies to every space object. Station applies to only stations. I like to keep these for can, scan, can, doc, can, hail, can, mine. It keeps it clear for me when I'm looking at them. The descriptions for planets and stuff are stored here as well. Like, there's a description of the surface. I'm going to redo some things. I just flipped the planet. Yeah, I want it to be that way. In the old original prototype, I did some stuff that I think I'm going to redo or rebuild. Let's save that. Go back into the original prototype. It's a big project. Takes a while sometimes. All right, so in the back in the maps, if I go into one of these, this one, go into the expanse. I'll pull up in one of these old stations, space stations. I had an activated trigger, and in each one, actually probably this one, they're set up to pull all their settings from these little events here. This one was set up to basically pick the backgrounds and all this, and I think I've got a better way to do that now. And then there's the object scanner script is inside here, and then there's a docking script. What I want to copy sort of are these settings events that I made, where each of them lets me kind of set up the space station from these custom events that I built. So I can choose whether it has the different areas of the space station, what the story node is, like if I wanted to be an office or something. There's some other stuff in the other settings boxes. This lets you pick the background, change the text color, put a description, and then there's stuff like the trading post, like the shop or merchant setting, and that's everything from the name, what they say when you get there, what they're buying, what are you looking for, or if there's anything you want to sell, I'll buy it, thanks for the sale. All these little messages that I can store, such as the buy and sell factor. They'll buy for less than, or they'll charge you more. If the buy factor is higher, it'll cost more when you're buying stuff in the store. Then there's the background, which lets you pick a background, and the shop inventory lets you pick what is actually being sold in the shop. And then I had similar things for the repair and the lounge. The lounge, I've got it set up so I can store, I think it's like 2, 3, 4. Yeah, it's about 20 rumors that I can store here, and each of these I can use as conditions to whether the rumors display or not, or they can show different rumors based on actions. If the player has done something, I can turn a switch on and have a rumor describe, oh, I heard that you did this, or so-and-so did this, or some, people are talking about some event that happened that maybe the player triggered. And then this older one was to pick whether it was a station or a planet, and I don't have to do that anymore. I've kind of fixed some of that. There's also one for mining, when you're mining asteroids. I think this was supposed to originally be inside a custom event, and there's a spawner that I've got set up that'll fling resources at the player. There's a ton more custom events in this project than the other. I'm trying to cut down a little bit, so I don't need as many as I've got here. There's so many. But the ones in the other project are more straightforward, more concise. There's going to be several that I'm going to do that I need, like the events for giving missions. There's some that actually I use for settings, like volume. Instead of using like the built-in sound, like if you type in sound, it'll give you the option to play a sound with the built-in event, and you can have a volume setting and do all that. I also like to use, I have my own custom one that I'm not sure why I have this one here, but there's a couple use cases where I've set up so if you turn a switch on or off, a certain type of sound won't play, but other sounds will. And that's for things like the computer voice. So if the ship computer voice is on, it'll actually check the volume stored in this menu and everything. And I believe there's a way that I had the pitch set up somehow, but most of it's just things that I thought I was going to need in multiple places, which I don't. I actually don't need some of these dungeon maze scripts. I don't really need I don't need a lot of them, but there's some that I'm going to keep, some that are probably going to be useful further down the line. There's some that I like. I like to make my own custom stuff sometimes. This is what I call the once branch advanced, because built into the engine, since I've already set this up, so built into the engine is a thing called a once branch, and this event here, when the game loads up, whenever you open an event or load anything for the first time that has a script, it'll actually do the left path the first time, and every single time after that it'll take the right side. So you can have this set up to initialize variables on the left. You can have it pick images and whatnot, set the initial values of stuff, and then every other time it'll skip that initiation or initializing or whatever it is that you want to do. Like sometimes you might want like a character to say something once, like the first time they greet you, you know, you'd probably make a message box. Hello, I've never seen you before. And it'll play that it'll play that the first time, and then, you know, good to see you again. So the first time it would take the left path, and he'd be like, oh, hello, I've never seen you before. Every other time, good to see you again, because you've already been there. And that saves you from having to use a switch or a variable every time you want a character or anything to happen just once. You don't need to use a switch for that. I made my own version. It's set up to do two different types of once branch actions, and the way that it works is it's set up so that it's creating a collection and then returning whether or not that action has been added to the collection before. So what this allows me to do is create a once branch that I can undo the once condition if I wanted. So in certain cases, I want something to happen only one time, like giving out a mission or turning some switch on or whatever, and then having the same script run again but take a different path. And eventually, I know I was going to run into a situation where I want something to happen once. I didn't want to use switches, but if I wanted to undo the state that it had happened once, I needed to set something up custom. So what this does is it just checks to see all you really have to look at is one or the other side, because technically it's just one script here, and if it's not in the collection, it's going to add it to the collection. And so that's all it's doing. It's checking the ID, and when I use this once branch, I'm going to show you what it looks like. Basically, I would just type once, use the once branch, and I can choose between whether I have two different collections. One's for missions specifically, and one's for system. So a system variable that I want to initialize. I would probably say something like variable ID 1. You just give it a unique number or identifier. And so every time it hits this, it will set the variable ID 1 and add it to the collection. So it'll take this left path the first time because that's not in the collection yet. But it will go to the left. And then every other time it hits this, it'll take the right path. But then I could go later and say remove from collection or remove from a collection at index and remove variable ID 1. It'll find it and delete it from the collection, and then I can actually rerun the script and it'll take the left path again. So that's I always thought that was useful. It's not incredibly important for most cases. The once branch, the normal once branch is fine, but I made an advanced one. And then I've made my own save function, which clears all, and it clears everything that's dead on a map, and then it goes through all the maps. And in each map, it goes through every single actor, and every single actor it stores every single actor variable. So there's a few things that I'm going to have to do in the other project that I haven't gotten around to quite yet. So I'm just kind of looking at the stuff that I'm going to have to add and throwing things into my to-do list. Add advanced once branch script. And save game scripts. Those are pretty obvious. Obviously the game's going to have to be saved. Did I just get a message? I did just get a message. Jeez. Oh yeah, a lot of these are unnecessary. I don't even need some of these anymore. There's some that I'm going to keep that they're like story related or message boxes and stuff that are called from inside the interfaces. There's also some stuff that I was experimenting with that is unnecessary. And then there's a lot of things that are pretty simple. I think I can combine them, making a log type parameter and then having it add to different logs instead of having an individual. I think that's what this was doing. This one was taking all of these other four, when I could just cram all the scripts from these four into this one custom event. So obviously a lot of things to refine. There's some stuff like displaying terminal messages, and there's a specific type of message, the radio message or hailing, different kind of dialog box. And I don't think I even need some of the Minimap update is now on the Minimap interface instead of in a custom event. Most of the stuff that I have here that I might keep are some of the map settings where when you enter a map it checks certain things, but I don't think I have to do half of this stuff anymore. Weather casting, the control switch event I like. This is one that I find useful when you have a bunch of different types of control schemes that you need to switch between. Rather than always using an enable and then following it with a disable or whatever, because usually you want to disable one set of controls and enable a different one. So I've created this control switch event. It's useful. You can set it up so that your description has all the stuff that you'd want to actually display. I'll show you really quick. Control switch. When you run it, it actually shows you, type menu, ship, rover, or dialog. So dialog switches to the dialog controls, rover would switch to rover controls, etc., etc. And the way that works is just setting it up to check which of the control types that you're actually selecting. So I don't think I included off in there, but if you set it to off, it actually turns off all the controls. So you can have it disable everything if you want all the controls off, and then it'll disable dialog and the main controls and turn on the menu controls. that's useful when you have several different control schemes. Like this game has maybe 6, but when you need to switch between a bunch of them, it's easier to have it set up like that. So custom events, I think I've talked about them just a little bit, but they're incredibly useful. They're exactly the same as the built-in events. Most of the built-in events, at least a lot of the built-in events, tend to be set up in the same way that custom events are. So like, there's only a couple built-in events that use interfaces, and I think I stored those somewhere else. I don't actually think I have them in here anymore in this project. But back over here, there's a few things I want to copy from the other project, but I'll pop back in here for a little bit. I'll just go into this broken script. No, that's not the broken script. I deleted the broken script. I'll go into this empty one that I made that I haven't done anything with yet. So, built into 001, there's a couple interfaces and a couple events, like the message box, or the in, and the shop. Show in, show shop. These are built in, and they interact with one interface that comes set up by default. And you can go into the settings menu, and you can see that shop intro and in and message box. These 3 default, plus the loading screen. The loading screen is also default, but I don't even know what happens if you don't have a loading screen set up. But if you don't have message box or shop set up, using those events, like say you were to just go in here and delete the shop interface, those events wouldn't work anymore. And if you delete the message box interface, the message box event doesn't work anymore, and that's because they're attached directly to these interfaces. So, there's a whole bunch of scripting in here that actually that's triggered by the settings in the message box event. So we'll go into my empty script. It's the advanced message box that has the most settings, and it's everything from the width of the message, where it is on screen vertically, horizontally, how tall it is, whether to show or hide the border, and these are all things that you can customize and change in the message box interface, which right now I don't have set up because this is the default interface. I haven't built my dialog screens yet. And you get all these fancy things, but the way that those are set up is exactly the same here in the custom events window. And you would just add parameters like parameter 1, parameter 2 for each of the, let me pull that up again. Each of these is considered to be a parameter in the custom event editor. So when you're editing a custom event or creating a new one, you can give it a tooltip description. You can name the parameter whatever you want. Looks like a variable. It'll look like a local variable basically once you're, I don't know what symbol that was. Variable, nah, parameter 1. I'll just keep it like that. So when you're actually inside the script, you can see your local variables, but let's say that you were trying to pass the value of one of those parameters into this script. You would want to use these values here, parameter 1 and parameter 2. So if I wanted to make the local variable actor ID something that, let's say I've got these 2 parameters set up. If I use the corpse cleanup custom event anywhere, now we can see these 2 parameters, and if I mouse over them, they'll show the tooltip description, but I haven't put any tooltip description quite yet. But if you were to put anything in here, anything, value, just like that, anything is now stored inside parameter 2, and value is stored inside parameter 1. Whatever you put in these will be passed into this parameter and brought inside the script. So put anything you want there, tooltip, etc., tooltippy, and you can have it have a default entry. So, if I save this, come back in here, and we use the corpse cleanup again, you'll see that that default entry is now there. So if you have a value that you want to initially start with, you can use that. And all of these are how you choose the different types of values that are being passed. So you can choose from direction, angle, rotation, angle, color, color with alpha, which adds transparency, a timer or time, speed value, multi-line text like the message box where you would type in a bunch of stuff, a text cluster, branch cluster. You can use XYZ positioning, a toggle which will return a 0 or a 1, which pretty much a switch, range number, you can have it return any range of numbers, or you can pick from any of these lists. And the lists are basically actor templates, team, statistics, sounds, music, area of equipment, whatever you need to check, you can check. So now if we go back and use, let me save it. If I've got it set to a dynamic map list and we go back to use that custom event, now we'll have a list of maps to pick from. And that's useful in a lot of cases. Let's just put parameter here. That's useful when you want to, if you're scripting something and you're inside the custom event script. Let's just pull anything here. Really anything with a map. If it's got this map selection area here, you can click this box and select the, I'm in a different custom event, whoops. Let me get out of here. Yeah, if you're inside that particular custom event and you wanted to position the actor, you can actually pull that parameter up here, parameter 2, and whatever they've selected as the map in this list will be passed in through parameter 2, and that will pick the map from this list. So that's pretty much the way that custom events work. That's really all there is to it. All of these have different types of stuff. These are almost the same things that you'll find in this list here, but it's the color field, the delay, if you want to make it a delay, like if I save it and then we do this, you can see that that's turned into the standard delay that you'll see in most events that could be time-based. So if you're making a timer-based event, you'll probably want to use this time or time with delay. And the same applies for pretty much every single one of these. It has a corresponding section that it'll bring in, except for these ones. The toggle gives you just 2 buttons to choose from, and you can change what the label says, and range number is slightly different. Branch possibilities is a sliding bar, which this is set up by how many branch possibilities you set to the bottom of the event. So if you wanted to have something go out of multiple paths, like the once branch or the comparison branch, when you put that in there, you can see these 2 branches, and that's how you would give your custom event multiple branches. So if it's these 2 work together. I haven't worked with them very much myself, so I'm not going to go into covering those because I probably wouldn't explain it very well, but we'll just say that I covered that at the very least. The very last few things here, you can actually make the very last parameter into a collection instead of just a variable. So if you wanted to bring in a collection of information, anything really, you can actually set this value up. I haven't used it in a while, but I know how to use it. I've done it with something, and I believe you can do something like passing in a list and it will give you a collection of that list, or if you pass in really any value that should be a collection. I would use text for this because you can actually pass in any value into those parameters no matter what they're set to, but it'll error if it's not set up properly inside the script to read it from the right events. So don't usually use this one very often, but you might use this one a lot more. If you tick the function, it'll actually make it into a use value instead of a script. So you can't see those. You can see them here, and it lets you pretty much set up in the same way. This is a use value, so if you put this in a script, I think it'll error. Actually, those aren't my use values. Those are the... Oh, yes, they are. Those are my use values. If you put them in the script, it might error, but I've never tried it like that. Normally, those are set up so that you can access them from the custom section in this use values menu. So if you have anything that you just need to return as a value, like basically this just gives me the current ship speed, this gives me an angle, this tells me how long it's been since the last frame. I would just say custom.delta time to put that there. But it lets you make these custom use values, so it'll end up in this list with all the rest of them. And that's really helpful. I don't know if I want to save any of those changes. And I've done a little bit of work on the action flashing timer that displays the flashing text whenever you're doing anything. I've also rearranged a few things. I've pulled out all the menu stuff from the flight menu. I've moved that over here to the flight buttons menu. This is where I'm going to keep some of this stuff for now. And the reason being is because I can keep the flight menu and the camera separate. Anything that's on the camera interface can be updated separately from anything that's on this interface. So when I update the buttons over here, or if I want to update the main menu, which contains several window fields that I want them to be updatable without this check mark. And if I do that, it refreshes everything on the flight menu. So I've moved everything off the flight menu. There's one more step that I have left, and that's moving the indicators to, I think I'm going to move them to their own interface, but I'm not sure yet. I'm trying to work out the layering, because you have to open the flight menu, and that causes the flight buttons menu to open, which then gets overlaid with this Minimap. However, there's also a cursor text that has to be pulled to the front of everything. So the flight menu has to come on first, then the flight buttons have to turn on, then the Minimap comes on, and then finally the cursor is pulled to the front using a show hide interface event, which pulls it to the front. So for now, I've just set it up so that the buttons are over here instead of over here, and now I can update the main menu or the flight menu regularly. However, the issue I've got is that my navigation icons, all the icons that are floating around the side of the screen, those are currently part of that interface. So I've got an issue where when you refresh that interface or update it, they kind of flash back into place, and that's not what I want them to do. And this guy's going to kill me while I'm talking. And I don't want them to flash like that. That's not at all what I want. Anytime the interface updates, I might be able to find a way to fix it so it doesn't do that. But the easiest way, I think, would just be to move them to their own interface, because I can update the flight interface on its own without having to worry about the navigation icons refreshing or whatever. And the Minimap's on its own interface overlaying everything else, so it stays on top. All the dots get projected up on the top of the Minimap. I've also added some steps that make this flasher here, whenever you're trying to do something from a distance, you'll get an out of range message.
Out of range.
And once you're on top of it,
Scanning.
it'll turn to scanning. And when you're docking at a planet, you'll see orbiting until it's loaded in. And we do a deep scan. I'll turbo through.
Plant life detected.
And then it'll flash shorter because it only has to flash until you're done docking. And additionally, I added it so it does the same thing on the space stations. Now there's a docking message as you're docking at the space station. There's also the mouse over descriptions that I'm adding in here. So whenever you hover over the screen in the middle of the station, you get a description at the bottom. There's also this description field over here that I haven't set up quite yet. And I need to go into my context menu. Oh, one moment. Sometimes I have to pop away for a minute, so I'm working overnight and doing this while I'm working. So, back in the station menu, I haven't made it so this description gets updated. So I think I want to add that to the docking operation. But also actually could set it up so that it checks where it is in the station. Right now I'm just going to add it to the docking operation. I don't want to make it a retrieve text field, I don't think, because it's going to have multiple values. So let's say how am I doing it with the station or the orbiting? Good question. I've already got it set up so that the orbit menu is pulling description. So it's actually just pulling the surface description from a variable. It's not exactly what I want, because it's, as you move through the space station, it's going to change. But the orbit menu is only going to talk or tell you about the planet. But the station, as you move between the different areas of the station, this description here should change to different things. So I think that's what I'm going to do, is add it here. And has to be in the station menu. So this is where it'll turn it on, make everything transparent, play the sound, and I'll actually just use this one here. Let's go all the way up here to the docking station menu. I believe it's the station info. There we go. I want to set that to the actor variable. This is currently where I'm keeping this description, inside an actor variable of the currently selected actor. I want to pull the station, where is my station description? Set the station description text. I'll put that right above the action flasher. So that should change the value that's being held in the description field. I'll kill him. Dock at the station.
Docking.
There we go. My description has updated. Now, that was an easy one. I don't remember if that's in my to-do list. It's not. So I'll add that and say that it's done. One more down. It's been about 40 minutes. I did do some testing earlier, which was mildly amusing. If you use a spawning timer on the map, you can actually get it to create a whole bunch of enemies, and then they'll just fight each other while fighting you. And let me see what I have this set to. 20 enemies every 3 seconds, they'll spawn an enemy. So these guys will come out, I'll fly around, and they'll kick my butt. And once I die, there's an error where they don't stop trying to fight the player. And I think you might have seen that yesterday or last night. And you'll see they start targeting each other. I'm almost dead. Oh no! You'll see the movement of the player comes to a stop, but the ships just end up flying around and fighting each other. Which is pretty great. It's not a behavior I was anticipating, but the way that I have it set up right now, they switch targets whenever they bump into each other or whenever they shoot each other, so they actually they do end up becoming enemies on accident. Those guys are all just clumping up here. I don't know what's going on. I think it's because I'm too far away. Aw, there we go. Something will break off and join. I died a little bit too far away for it to be as entertaining as I want, but... And then if they explode off camera, they don't shake the screen. Well, that's interesting and fun. I don't want it to spawn a million times, so I'm going to move that out of the way. But I'm getting closer to having enemies. Enemies that work, enemies that fight you, enemies that chase you. The hard part is going to actually be getting them to behave like, I don't know, intelligently, so that they make decisions to flee and return. I also haven't figured out this problem that I'm having where they flip-flop. They do like a 360 spin every time the player crosses a certain point, higher or lower than their Y position. They'll flip-flop. It's kind of weird. Currently they don't distinguish each other as friends. In the attack range, I might want to squish down just a little bit because they do miss a lot. But I think that's kind of what I want. I want low-level ships to kind of miss more. Higher-level ships will probably have a more narrow attack range, so they're better at attacking. And the minimap dot not showing up till the controls are pressed. So, when the game first starts, I believe, player minimap dot. Okay, if the ship isn't moving, it should at least do that the first time. So. I want a once branch in here. So, if I'm correct, the first time this runs, it'll just skip right past this and update where the minimap dot is supposed to be, because until the ship starts moving, it doesn't actually position the minimap dot. And when the game starts, you don't see yourself on the minimap. That little once branch condition should fix it. It'll actually initially position the dot as soon as the map is opened. There we go. We see my blue dot is here and I haven't moved. Die. Their minimap gets cleared off the map whenever they die. I haven't set up the corpse cleanup yet, so they're still on the map as a non-existent actor. You can turn them back on. He doesn't have any health, so he's not alive. But if you kill revive him, that's another thing you can do with the debugger. If you have an object selected that has life and death conditions set up, you can kill it and you can revive it. Kill will blow him up, and revive will give him a bunch of health and bring him back to life. I'll make him existent and revive. Oh, I just keep killing the poor guy. I don't know if I can bring him back again. Oh yeah, if you make him existent, now he's healed, but he's still invisible, so you have to revive him again. So that's one way. If you're testing enemies, you want to bring things back. You can also do it with the player. You can kill yourself and revive him, or revive the player. So I want them to kind of miss regularly. That's kind of a good behavior, at least for a basic non-strong enemy. I do kind of want them to miss a bit more, and that's because the sight cone they have, I think I drew a diagram of it the other day, but it's a narrower angle where they're able to shoot at the player. So they have to be closer to to pointing directly at the player. I'm going to do some tweaking and figure out how to fix it so that they're more accurate. What's going on over here? I don't want to show off too much of my friend's secret projects. I wish more people would join in and converse with me. But alas, so I don't really want to move my indicators quite yet. I'm going to do that later tonight. For now, I think I'm going to take a small break, just a short break. I'll be back here not too much longer from now. Got to do some stuff at work, and then I'd like to just try and stream for the rest of the evening, or as long as I can, as much as I can while I'm working on this. I probably won't know what I'm doing half of the time. I don't have anything really planned to show off. I've actually fixed some of the things that I was going to work on during the stream. I fixed a couple things with interfaces off the stream. I might cover some aspects of combining my interface elements. I do kind of want to cut down the number of fields that I'm using, because look how many there are. It's just absurd. If you look at the old project, some of these interfaces, they just became such a mess to work with, because everything was combined, or nothing was combined. Not everything. Nothing was combined. So once you get into the buttons and billboards and shops and stuff, you can see there's not much. We'll go further into the trading post. There's a lot of interfaces, a lot of sub-interfaces, a lot of button layers, and a lot of this I'm going to have to do again. But once you get into the items area, it starts to get quite crazy. So there's just individual pieces everywhere, and a lot of these can be combined. I don't actually need individual frames for some of these. The same thing applied to a lot of the equipment menus. If you look at how many there are, just an unreal amount. And just imagine if you have one thing that you need to scoot backwards to here or to somewhere in the middle, it'll take forever. So I want to actually try and, before I get my menus this crazy again, I'd like to at least try and fix the background elements. The text fields, I'm still going to need 100 billion text fields, but it's going to be way less when I don't have all these little individual pieces just floating around everywhere. Now, the one complicated part about these interfaces is the mouse over fields. A lot of them, it covers the entire section of the interface, which I believe I could set up better. I think I have some better ideas on how I'll set it up this time around, but these are incredibly complicated. I don't even remember if there's anything, there's nothing fancy going on behind the scenes there, but it just shows every statistic of the ship, what your stats are, what your weapons are, and those are important. I think that's going to be important for me to recreate, at the very least, a detailed equipment menu, detailed statistics, so you can see what's going on. There's also a discovery log for all the stuff that you find. So I'll be back here in probably 20-30 minutes. Just going to jump off for a little bit, go finish some things here at work, and then I'll see you soon. Thank you for checking out these videos, and I'm glad you guys are watching and subscribing. Just maybe leave some comments, or if you guys want to email, contact@screamingbrainstudios.com, or just pop into the stream and say hi. I just want to know what you guys want to see, what you'd like to see me work on, what kind of stuff I should cover. I don't mind doing tangents, going off on tangents and covering aspects of 001 Game Creator. If you guys want to watch more streams about making graphics, just let me know. I am here for you guys. I want to help. I want to entertain. I want you guys to be interested in what I'm doing, or at least I'd like to help you guys become more interested in what you guys are doing, teach you guys about making games with these affordable tools, free tools, software that is within reach, rather than stuff like Unity and Unreal can take an incredible amount of time to learn, and especially working as an independent game developer. There are smaller game engines out there like Game Maker Studio, Stencil, Construct, that all have visual coding, and it's good for people who don't know how to program. And that's the kind of stuff I'd like to cover more, because there's plenty of people out there teaching programming and how to use Unity, and not as many teaching how to use these more obscure game engines. So hopefully this is the kind of stuff you guys might want to watch. But let me know in the comments or wherever. And I'll see you guys in about 30 minutes.